Wagwan, it's that guy. Not Locs, not Nation. I appreciate your participation in the Dreadloxoxo to this not channel. Talking about dreadlocks, as always, we're here doing our best, keeping things flowing like the Nile River, making dreadlock content. I love freeform locks. Today's video, I'm reacting to some freeform lock maintenance. After 30 years of this dude not doing anything to his hair, he decided to go see Dreadloxoxo, Krissa, Rajshi, professional dreadlock sorceress. Established 2010, Rebel Salon, Philly, Dreadloxoxo, Philadelphia in the house. So this is actually the dude that I wanted to do a video on here today. He went into her shop and she says, don't really have the words for this appointment. Definitely one of my own career's histories book. Sloth Paw, with 30 years of freeforming, 30 years of fuck yous to societal norms, 30 years of Dreadloxoxo and growth. Trimming our locks isn't an easy decision for anyone, no matter how many times you do it, but trusting someone else to do so after 30 years of never allowing anyone to work on your locks, man, Patrick, thank you isn't enough. To trust the trust you gave me today for this beyond measure, and the gratitude I feel in my heart. You wrote a lot. I'm not going to read it all, but essentially this dude went from 30 years of freeform dreads with just a little bit of trimming here and there, which in this photo reminds me of such a militant stance with the army pants, reminds me of Damian Marley all the way. And he went to this afterwards. And I wanted to know your opinions, because I personally think it looked better like this. The after, she added a fake dread here and she's trimmed up some of the wicks in a way so it kind of looks natural, but a job well done. So she did make a video on it, and I did want to just make a quick reaction to this video here today. Also going to look at request to follow this dude. I also want to look at what's going on here with this video. So let's quickly see what they're talking about here.
3 times. Okay. The last time you trimmed them was 2014, yes? Okay. So these are all natural, and I have to say that I am super surprised at how they feel. They're very soft, even all the way to the bottom. I was really expecting these to be like hardened.
And that's the thing, hardened locks after 30 years normally tend to be from like interlocking and over crocheting, tend to get the harder locks. But freeforms, yes, they do actually tend to stay a lot softer than you would think. And this dude's dreads actually being more like a sponge. So let's continue with our
picture better, and I just really appreciate that. And I'm not gonna let him face the camera because he is a little anxious.
Crazy wick, huge flat wick that he's got growing there on the side.
But I'm just gonna let you guys like in on our appointment today, because he and I have been talking for quite some time about, I don't know, just me checking out his scalp and seeing how things are. And I gotta say, like, as big as his locks are, he has all his hair. He's not balding at all.
No balding. This patch here is mainly just from the separation of the weight, kind of pulling the part of his hair. So I mean, that happens. It's not like he's balding in that area. It's just that the part between his locks is being pulled down from the weight of his locks after 30 years.
And they smell good. They're not stinky. They're heavy, but not as heavy as I expected them to be.
And they would get a lot heavier once they get wet. And that's the only thing about having locks this long, is when you're going through that process of washing them, it's going to be quite the process of drying them as well. Personally, I don't think I could grow my locks this long. What are you guys thinking? Would you be able to make it this long, 30 years of freeforming?
So today we are going to trim them for sure, and you guys are gonna get to watch that.
By the way, Chrissy, I thank you so much for making this content, because this is spectacular, a spectacular client to have come in to your dreadlock salon, and just to see dreadlocks at 30 years in the modern day is pretty rare. So I'm so much thankful towards you and creating this content for us so we can see this in person, well, in the internet.
And you're just basically going to get to just kind of be a fly on the wall during an appointment. I'm not really going to be paying attention to you guys that are watching. Just going to be working on his hair, but I think we're going to trim them, and I think we might attach them just with a string to fill things out up here to make more locks on his head. And he asked for a big fat synthetic dreadlock, which I've never made before. So yes, Ashley, this is a huge honor.
Kind of crazy that he asked for one fake dread after 30 years of having these super long freeform real dreads.
Aside from his lovely wife, no one has ever worked on his hair.
Reminds me of myself. I've never had anybody but myself work on this set of locks, these freeform locks. They look sick. They're in really good shape for 30 years long. And I mean, he has trimmed them a few times, so that technically they could almost be down to the floor by this point. But like, that's nuts. My hair is probably about right here right now. I mean, I would like to get it down to this long. As long as they get like 5 more years from now, we'll see where they're at. They might be at this length in 5 years. But I do want to trim my hair at 10 years. And by the way, she's got some pretty dope pink and purple locks herself. So I like what she's doing here. I kind of wanted to see this video because it shows me into the eyes of a loctician's world on her procedures and how she's kind of doing things in her business. She is now measuring where to trim them by using these clips and taking photos and showing them and agreeing on a spot that they would like to trim the locks. Looks like they're trimming them at least by half. I feel like it looks like such a dreadlock militant with those pants and the long hair like that. Crazy to have that one big dreadlock now cut off like that. So one thing about the way that she's cutting the locks that I really like is that she's not just cutting straight across to make a blunted end. She's rounding it off to kind of have a more natural look. This was the first time I've seen this happen where it was like a round cut, because normally I've seen people cut dreads in a V shape to kind of give that natural look afterwards that kind of tapers the lock off or like wisps the tip off a bit.
I love how dreadlocks are like, it's like a timeline in here.
You can see here how this one was trimmed at one point. It looks like it was just cut straight across. Is that better? Ooh, that looks better.
Yeah. Because like on this big guy or big flat one, like these were 2 at one point, and those were 2.
And then in some of them,
you can still kind of see the bodies through.
you can see where I've done the dread balling.
Okay.
So dread balling is when you take the frizzy hair and ball it up and put it into the dread to keep the frizz away. I was kind of surprised to hear that he was dread balling it, because it means that you're kind of concerned of the frizzy hair. And when you're freeforming, typically frizzy hair isn't an issue for people because it's part of freeforming. It's part of letting your hair be free. So my suggestion is just don't even dread ball. Just let your hair freeform fully if you are choosing that route, and just embrace the frizz. You know me, I'm always saying embrace the frizz.
And like,
and he's saying that back in the 90s and the 80s that was the only way of doing it. Now there's more techniques like crochet hooking, rubber banding it back in. Actually, the shitty part here is I might get a copyright strike because of the music in the background, so I gotta mute the video from this point out, just in case they do pick up on the audio that's going on in the background there. But basically, she's taking the scissors, she's making this loop like a U cut on the locks, and I feel that it does look kind of natural because I've seen wicks like this. This reminds me of the beaver tail wick beaver tail dreads at its fullest when they're being cut like this. He's got some thread in here as well. It looks like thread anyways. This could also be just a bead. It's really made that thread a lot thinner in that area. But she's just really going to work now. She's really just getting at them and cutting them up. Losing a lot of length here. So, I mean, for him, I'm sure he's just tired of walking around with heavy hair, and especially when they're wet. He wants a little bit more of ease when he's doing his maintenance routines. So by all means, if anybody is interested in like getting their hair trimmed, like go for it. Don't try not to be attached to your locks so much where like you're obsessed with not ever having to cut them, because you know, you never really know. In times of stress or discomfort, you might need to do a trim if you really feel like your soul is speaking that out for you. So play your dreadlock journey by ear. And never be afraid to have to do something like this, because it will grow back. And you don't have to feel like, you know, you're losing yourself if you do ever trim your locks. I just found like that's something I went through when I was cutting my first set of locks off. I felt like I couldn't do it. Like I felt like I would have been shaming people, or I would have been betraying people, or I would have been letting people down. But really, it's your journey, so you do what you got to do, right? One thing we can notice here, like she's brushing off all the loose hair and kind of like the dandruff that might have been in there. But essentially, like she's gone and trimmed them now to a point where they're really so much shorter, and you can already see the difference on how much lighter that they look at this point now that they've been cut down like this. So I like the one of them is still really long like that. It kind of shows where he was at. I would keep maybe one like that, maybe even just to wrap up the hair, and if not indefinitely, like, you know, just for a little bit. If not definitely, then just do it for a little bit. But I mean, that's just me talking. They ended up cutting all of his locks shorter, to be honest. But it's very interesting to see this dude's style. I feel like he's been holding the freeform game down pretty well. He's got the full beard, the full stash, the full freeforms. It's a really cool look. So I would be interested to see how this dude's locks turns out after he lets them kind of round off and kind of remature, because once you cut locks, the cutting looks fresh for like quite a few months, until like it starts to mat down again into the dread where you won't really notice that they've been trimmed. So within a few months, I would like to see where his locks are looking like. That's why I did follow him on Instagram there. But it's crazy how much lock has actually come off of his head here. And I wish that she shows us inside. Is there anything inside the lock that we want to see? Any buildup of products? Any buildup of dry skin? Dandruff? I feel like some of these locks that she's going to show us here weren't the best idea to knot up. Like, I hope she shows it here. At this point, now this is the part of locticians that I don't fully understand yet. This is the thread technique. I've seen a few people use this, and you're basically using thread to reattach dreadlocks to your hair, whether they're real or synthetic. And the amount of thread that's in her hand right now, like, kind of blows my mind, because how much thread do you need to do this? This is something that I don't know how to do. I've been messing around with thread a little bit on Michelle's hair lately, just as decorations, but I've never sewn on another dread as an extension. I think it's quite the interesting process. I don't personally agree with it. Like, I wouldn't do this myself, or I wouldn't even really want to do it to somebody else. Even if they were paying me, I would just say, you know, of course, go the freeform route. But this is lock reattachment. We've seen a lot of lock reattachments in the past where people will cut off their locks and years down the road put them back on their head. This instance right here, she is separating the congos at the base of the head, and she's actually ripping them apart here. I am all for this technique, to be honest. If you really need to rip it, then I always have been okay with it. Some people don't like the ripping of the Congos, but they also don't like the scissors. I kind of prefer the ripping separation over using scissors, but this is a way to get all that frizzy hair in there as well. And this is actually a part of the show that I'm truly intrigued by too, because I want to see how this is actually done. You know, by keeping the base separated. Look at his new growth; it's not dreaded yet, so you can see what his hair type is like coming in. See how big this wick is here? It's crazy. True beaver tail dreads now. So she puts all the hair that is belonging to this dreadlock in place there. There's like a kind of a loop there on that freeform, which would close up on its own eventually. So now she's twisting it a little bit and then putting the thread through the hair. Oh no, she's crocheting it closed. Okay, so she's now crocheting all that loose hair into the lock with a single hook crochet hook. Single hook crochet needle. Seems like crocheting is quite the popular way of going about dreading hair. I mean, it is pretty instant. It does leave scars in the locks, like you will notice where they've been crocheted if overdone. And now here's where she's going to reattach a lock that they just cut off to his head to fill it out, to make his hair look more voluminous in certain areas. So she's just kind of finding the right placement for it. She's going to now separate this lock here as well. I've heard that this technique is a bit easier on the scalp if you use a little bit of spray water before ripping them. This can hurt. To be honest, this is not a painless technique. If she rips the wrong way or too hard, like, it does hurt the patient. So here she's gonna put that loose hair back again and start crochet hooking everything back into place before she reattaches the lock. But actually here now she's just gonna take the other lock and let's see what goes on here. So she takes her thread, which looks like almost like a fishing line thickness of thread. It's not like regular sewing thread like I've been using. So now my question is, what thickness is that thread? If anybody knows, let me know in the comments down below, please. And now she puts the dread there beside it. And how is she going to attach this thread here? This is the part that I really just want to see. No, she hit it. So I don't see a needle, or is there a needle? She's probably one of the first locticians I've seen to actually show her technique. A lot of people keep this on the hush-hush. I personally don't feel like it's necessary. A lot of people feel like, oh, well, if I show my techniques on the internet, then I'm going to lose customers, I'm going to lose clients. But it's actually the opposite. You'll gain more people's trust and clientele, because if someone really wanted to do this by themselves, then they're going to find a way anyways. But most people don't want to do this by themselves. So even with you showing them how to do it, they're still going to come back to you to get it done. Firstly, because of you and your personality and your brand. Secondly, because they're lazy and they don't want to really do this by themselves. And third, a lot of people want to spend the money and get pampered at a salon. This is kind of like a novelty item for people, especially in days of COVID when people haven't been out their house in a while. So anyways, this is how she's been attaching it. She's just tying it on there as more volume. Nothing too crazy, actually. I don't like the look of how it attached underneath the root here. My question is, will this mat up into his lock eventually? Probably not, but I don't know. This dude's requesting it to be done, so why not? And what's going on with Chrissy's locks here? Are these extensions as well, or are these real? Hard to really tell. Synthetic locks, maybe. So now they just go about and reattach some more locks. So she must have done a few of them at this point. Just gonna fast forward here a little bit to where she puts in the synthetic dread, showing some synthetic locks that as options that she could use. So even at this point, like, the lock's looking pretty good still. So I guess they never ended up filming the lock extension that they had put in, but it did end up looking like this. This gray one here was the synthetic dread that had been put in, which oddly enough, you can tell like this one is kind of out of place on the back of his head. Shows a little bit of scalp here. Less scalp is showing overall since having all the locks reattached compared to the beginning. Well, actually, kind of looks like more scalp is showing now, especially it's more noticeable in that spot specifically. But I just wanted to know what you guys think. Do you like one better or two better after this dude's maintenance? What would you have done differently if this was your situation? I'm interested to know. I'm going to end this video here. I appreciate you guys stopping by every single day, watching the Knot Nation content, freeform lock content on the interwebs. This is the #1 spot for freeform lock content. So please do drop on by all the social mediums to send me photos and videos of your freeform locks for a chance to be featured on the show. We got the Reddit page, we got the Instagram page, we got Snapchat and Facebook, all available for you to send pictures and videos of your locks. So until next time, I'll see you guys around. Peace out, one love, say happy and natty, and I love your faces. I love your dreads even more. I'm gone. Adios. Check out. Oh yeah, by the way, shout out to Chrissy from Dreadloxoxo. Go follow her on Instagram if you are in the Philly area. And Chrissy, holler at me if you're watching this video. Let's get a collaboration in. I would love to get you as a guest on my podcast called The Dreadication that is popping off now. I'm working on booking people for the show. So if you are a freeformer or a loctician or even just a brand in or a business in the dreadlock scene, I want to talk to you on my show. So stay tuned for more podcast episodes to come, and I'll see you guys then. I'm gone.